Well, one of the biggest controversies to hit the Obama administration in the last year may have made little impact, if any, in the voting. In fact, a Fox News exit poll conducted last night found that a majority of voters trust the Obama administration to handle an international crisis, despite all of the attention on the terror attack that killed 4 Americans in Libya. You can see there, 57% say they do trust him, 42% said no. Joining me now to discuss it, Simon Rosenberg. He's the president and founder of advocacy group NDN and former Clinton campaign advisor. And Mark Thiessen, who is a fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, a Washington Post columnist, and a former George W. Bush speechwriter. Guys, welcome back to the program. So,
it's good to be here.
Simon,
Thanks,
you must be feeling happy today. And you know, you've been saying along, you don't see Libya as, you know, an issue, or really, parts of it you do. But it doesn't seem like the American people feel any differently than you, because if you look at the exit polls, specifically asking about foreign policy, which, you know, we're going to put Libya in there, only 5% said that that is the issue that's most important to them. So it may have been somewhat important to them, but only 5% said it was the most important issue. Do you think that the American people are paying attention to this issue, Simon?
Well, I think part of the reason those numbers came out the way they did last night, Megan, was that the country's pretty happy with Barack Obama as commander-in-chief. I mean, they've seen bin Laden killed, al-Qaeda is weakened, we're getting out of 2 unpopular wars. And when they look around at all the troubles we have, they feel like, you know, that stuff was going pretty well. It was the economic stuff they really focused on last night, right? Mm-hmm. And so I do think Libya matters. I do think the transition that's happening in North Africa, Middle East matters. Clearly, our foreign policy in a troubled region of the world is important for the country, but voters' attentions were elsewhere last night, in part because I think they felt that the president had it handled.
Do you think, Mark, that, you know, what role does the media have in those numbers? Because I'm not just talking about Libya, but, you know, that incredible stuff we were seeing in the Middle East with the, you know, burning the American flags and all the protests at our embassies, and some of it was over a video and some of it was just anti-Americanism. And then in the midst of all of it, of course, a terrorist attack that killed our ambassador. For the first time in 30 years, we lost an ambassador to an assassination. Do you think if that had been covered more, that we would have seen different numbers?
Well, it was covered initially when the whole thing was blowing up, but then the coverage sort of disappeared. And quite frankly, the whole Benghazi cover-up, if it hadn't been for Catherine Herridge and Fox News and Eli Lake, we wouldn't know half of what we know today because the mainstream media didn't cover it. So I think that's part of the issue. The other part of the issue, quite frankly, is that foreign policy tends to not be an issue until there's something like 9/11 or when it really comes home to hit us. And that hasn't happened. And then on top of that, Mitt Romney really didn't make an issue of the Benghazi attack. During he blew his exchange with Romney with Obama over it during the first debate, and then never brought it up again. And so if the candidate doesn't make an issue of something, then you can't expect voters to make an issue of it during the when they go into the polling place. And so you have the odd result after Obama blew the whole situation with Benghazi that 57% to 43, I think it was. They preferred him to handle an international crisis, you know, matter of 2 months after he blew a major international crisis.
Yeah, there was a question about whether Romney was trying to appeal to women and not being too contentious, and I don't know, about not going sort of, you know, going for that issue in the third debate, but he did take a complete pass on Libya in particular in that third debate. Simon, I want to ask you about the 60 Minutes thing, because we touched on this a little bit when you guys were on last week, but we didn't really get to the heart of it. And just so our viewers know, the president sat down for an interview with 60 Minutes right after the Libya attack, and he was asked about whether he believed that this was a terrorist attack, and Steve Kroft was kind of pressing him on it, like, you know, it looks like it. And the president gave this answer. We're going to play it in a second. Just watch this tape knowing that a couple weeks later at the second debate, he would try to tell the American people, look, I called this an act of terror from the beginning, and seemed to offer an impression that he knew this was terrorism from day one. But listen to what he told Steve Kroft right after the attack.
Mr. President, this morning you went out of your way to avoid the use of the word terrorism in connection with the Libya attack. Right. Do you believe that this was a terrorist attack?
Well, it's too early to know exactly how this came about, what group was involved, but obviously it was an attack on Americans, and we are going to be working with the Libyan government to make sure that we bring these folks to justice one way or the other.
My question is whether you think 60 really needed to release that, in particular after that second debate, Simon.
I'm going to leave it to 60 Minutes to determine what part of the interviews they should release or not release. You guys do. I do taped interviews here at Fox all the time. Some stuff gets in the cutting room floor.
I know,
and other parts doesn't.
you're not the president.
No, I understand, but what I just want to be clear that I think that all of this can be explained simply.
No. We've already talked about that. And you've explained that, and you have a great piece posted online that explains your feelings on that very well, and I recommend folks do it. But I'm zeroing in on the 60 Minutes and whether there was an obligation, I'll ask you, Mark, for them to make that public.
Sure. There absolutely was an obligation to do it. And look, this was taped on the day of the Rose Garden statement where Obama allegedly claimed that he had called it terrorism. And Steve Kroft says to him, "You avoided the word terrorism today, and why did you do that? Was it a terrorist attack?" And he said, "Well, it's too early to say." Now, in the debate, the town hall debate, there was that exchange where Obama was claiming that he had said it was terrorism, and Romney questioned him, and Candy Crowley jumped in and said, no, you're wrong. Well, CBS knew he wasn't wrong. They had the tape, they had the transcript, and they actually released a different segment of that the next day.
But
not that
segment.
part, for 2.5 weeks.
I got to go. Good job, as always, you guys.
Right.
Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Coming up.
Megan.